Good morning, students. Today, in this video session, we are going to study moral science. This is our new book, Responsible Personal Life. So, students, please open the book. Today, we will read our first chapter. Students, our first chapter is Love in Action. It means the love what we can show by our actions, not by words. So, we are going to start the chapter. It is given, love is the most popularly used word these days. It seems to have lost any specific significance or meaning. The writer wants to say that the love is most popularly used word nowadays, and it has lost any significant meaning. It means there is no special meaning for love nowadays. It can be used as a verb and a noun. The most prevalent uses among the young being that of a verb. The writer wants to say the verb can be used as a noun or we can use it as a verb. But nowadays, among the young beings, it is going to be used as a verb. It is used to indicate something as mundane as I love popcorn or I simply love the blue color, to the statement of affection like I love you. It means if we want to say that we like something or we like some person, so generally we add this word like I love popcorn, I simply love the blue color, and for the people I love you. The word love pops up a million times in our songs, movies, books, on posters, greeting cards, coffee mug, bags, jewelry. The list go on and on. It means nowadays we have a big list of things like greeting card, poster, books, coffee mug, bags, on which we can find the word written love, or we can hear it in songs and movies and on the other places. It is given, so then, what is love? It is the most important question. What is love? Is it a feeling, an emotion? Is it an attitude? Is it a virtue? What do you think defines love? It means we have to answer the question, what is love? It may be a feeling according to you, maybe an emotion, attitude, virtue. So, what do you think the word defines the love, or the line defines the love? You have to give that one. Now we are going to read the story. It is given here, be inspired. It was cold winter morning. 200 men stood huddled in unsteady rows with a grey prison square. First of all, the writer told us the atmosphere. It was a morning of winter season. There were 200 men. They were stood huddled in unsteady row within a compound of prison. Of their faces, gaunt with anxiety and fear, all looked fearful. Standing inside these high walls, topped and barbed wires, they seemed to be shivering more from dread than from the cold. They are looking that they are shivering because of fear, not because of cold. We know it was a winter morning, but they were very fearful. They were shivering because of fear. Loud and angry shouts could be heard from inside the prison block. They were able to listen the loud voices of shouting inside the prison block. It was the prison's warden. And who was shouting? The shout was of prison's warden. A sore and impatient man with an inclination for cruelty. It means he was a very cruel man. The warden seemed to be in an even fouler mood than usual, and today he was looking very fearful. They can guess that he is in a bad mood than his usual mood. The shouts grew louder, and the warden was right before the pathetic lot of prisoners. And slowly, the shouts started to grow louder, and after some time, the warden was just before the prisoners. "This is Auschwitz," shouted the warden. Warden told them that this is the prison of Auschwitz. Auschwitz was a prison. First of all, let me explain you Auschwitz. What is it? So, it was the name of the compound of a prison. It was a concentration camp of Auschwitz, where the prisoners of Second World War kept. So, I think so this is clear to you. It means it was the name of a prison, Auschwitz. We can say this. So, he said, "This is Auschwitz." The warden shouted this. "How dare you try to break out the prison?" He asked a question. How dare you to break out the prison? It means, how dare you try to escape from this prison? The two from right under my nose. And that thing you are doing just under my nose means when I am the warden. So students, this page is over, but we should look all the things given on this page. First of all, at the right side of the corner of this page, it is given have a discussion in the class and write down the different definitions of love on the blackboard. Each student can say a word or a phrase that they feel best defines the word love. So the students, nowadays we are not in the class, so we can't use the blackboard. So you should think yourself, what is love according to you? What you feel that best define the word love. So students, now we are going to turn the page. So please turn the page. So he was in angry mood and he said, "How dare you to try to escape from the prison and write under my nose? What audacity, I cannot imagine. How you did this, I cannot imagine." Spluttered the warden, a nerve on his forehead twitching angrily as if ready to explode with rage and indignation. And because of his angry mood, the prisoners were able to see his nerve on the forehead. This was twitching angrily, and it is looking that is ready to explode. From the warden's shout, it was understood that the cause of his rage was the escape of 3 prisoners the previous night from this heavily guarded Nazi concentration camp of Auschwitz. So, it is clear that 3 prisoners have escaped from the prison, so he was very angry. This was virtually impossible, but the brave 3 had actually managed to get out without the guard noticing. So it was a very difficult task. It is given the word impossible, but anyhow they managed to do it without the noticing of the guards. A worse fate of excruciating torture, misery, and death awaited the 3 when they were caught, which was not to be doubted. So, if they were They all three were caught again, so it will be a very difficult condition for them. They will be tortured worstly. This much was made clear by the warden, who minced on the words as he tried to instill cold fear into the hearts of any prisoner who possessed even a fleeting thought of escaping. So it was a signal, you can say it was a warning for the every prisoner who is thinking in his mind to flee from there. Not that he had to try hard, as itself the prisoners were a dejected lot. So for this means for the making the fearful all the prisoners, or for keeping the idea of fleeing from the prisoner, so it was not very hard for the warden, as itself the prisoners were a rejected lot, not knowing what fate awaited them, and of course not knowing what had happened to their families back home, because they were very worried about them and about their families also. Suddenly the warden stood still and silent. He looked at the crowd in front of him with a chilling glare of malice. So warden stood still there and he was very silent. He was looking to the crowd, means prisoners. This was not a good sign, and they understood that it was not a good sign for all the prisoners. Each prisoner waited with bated breath, for they knew that the warden was devising a new method of torture in his head, and they understood that the prisoner is thinking for a new method for torturing them. At last the warden spoke in a cold voice. As punishment for the escape of those three prisoners, 10 people from among you will face death by starvation. So the warden has devised a plan to torture them. So he said, as punishment for the escape of those three prisoners, means he want to give the punishment to these prisoners for the fleeting prisoners. So he announced that 10 people from among all the prisoners will face death. How? By starvation. I'm certain this will deter any of you from trying to escape in the future. And he's thinking that will be a lesson for you, that you will never try to escape from this prison in the future. A gasp of dismay swept across the prisoners, and they became very fearful. Who? The prisoners. Each man knew in his heart that it could be his turn to die that day, and everyone is thinking that it may be my turn today to die. Slowly the warden turned on his heel and started to walk between the rows. And now the warden turned on his heels and he started to walk between the rows. For what? To search the prisoners for giving the punishment. Once in a while, he would point at a man and say, "You." Immediately, the soldiers would come and drag the man away. So, once in a while, he would point a man and say. So, suddenly, he point out a man and said, "You." And what was the action of soldiers? Suddenly they came and dragged that man away from the other prisoners. Few men in the rows were weeping silently, some out of fear and some out of the relief after the warden had passed them by. So the few prisoners were weeping silently, some because of the fear that they may die today, and some because of the relief that the warden has passed from there. Some men stood stoically with faces hard as flint, not knowing what would trigger the warden's attention and warrant them as suitable candidates for punishment. And some are very tense that what can trigger in the mind of the warden, and he would think that he is a suitable candidate for the punishment. 7, 8, 9, and random selection went on. Only one more to go. So the now warden have selected 9 candidates and only one is remaining. The warden pointed at the last man standing in one of the back rows. And now the warden pointed out a person or a prisoner who was standing in the back rows. As soon as he heard the warden call and point towards him, the selected prisoner began to cry in a loud voice. So as the warden pointed out that person, he started crying in a loud voice. My wife, my children, please don't take me. He was shouting, he was crying, he was saying that my wife, my children, please don't take me. I have a family. As the soldiers moved in to drag the hysterical man, a quite determined voice sounded from the back. So as the soldiers were going to drag that person, before that a voice sounded from the back. I want to go instead of this man. He said, I want to get the punishment instead of this man. I have no family. He gave the reason that he has family, but I have no family. Please leave this man and take me in his place. Each and every head in the square turned to look at the owner of this voice. And after listening this, everyone was looking towards that person who voluntarily chose the death for him. A tall man wearing glasses stepped forward. And he was a tall man. He had a glasses. He stepped forward for the punishment. For a moment, even the warden seemed to be at a loss for words. The warden was also surprised, yet he regained his composure and giving this man who had volunteered a good stare, said with a shrug, so be it. And after listening this, the warden was lost, but suddenly he regained his composure and said to this man, so be it, and left the square hastily, and he left the place in a hurry. The soldiers let go of the first man. So soldier sent the first man, who crumped to the ground with relief, and this time he was on the ground and feeling relieved. They took hold of the new volunteer, but they did not have to drag him like the rest. So they have taken the new man in the custody, but there is no need to drag him like the other 9 prisoners. He walked with quiet dignity to the torture that awaited him, and he was going silently to the torture room. Each one of the prisoners and soldiers who stood in the grey prison square that day could never forget the face of the man who volunteered to die for the sake of another. So, all the prisoners of this grey prison square, they could never forget the face of that person who died for the sake of another prisoner. That man was Maximilian Kolbe. His name was Maximilian Kolbe. This is truly an inspiring real life story for our day and age. When we talk and think a lot of things about love without actually doing a single action of love. That is what I'm saying you before starting the story. It is a very inspiring story for us. We just use the word love in our words, but we should show it actually in our actions. C.S. Lewis, one of the intellectual giants of the 20th century and arguably one of the most influential writer of his day, gives an apt advice for the modern generation. Don't waste time bothering whether you love your neighbor. Act as if you did. It means don't waste time for thinking that you love your neighbor or not. Act and show it. This was the advice of C.S. Lewis. So the students here given something you can do. Write down 2 ways you can put the love you have for your family into action at home on a day-to-day basis. It means we have to write here 2 ways in which we can show our love to our family, but it should be in action, not in words. Class activity is also given. It is given what is your response to Kolbe's love in action. Have a discussion or a debate in the class on whether Kolbe's action was foolishness or not. So students, you should think yourself the action of that person, that prisoner who volunteered his life for the sake of another prisoner, it was a foolishness of that person, or it was a love for humanity. So think yourself about it, but I want to give you my view that I feel that the person has a feeling of love for humanity and he changed his love into action, so he volunteered his life for the another prisoner. So students, some more questions are given there. Read it carefully, and I want to tell you something about your unit test. We have the same test of 25 marks, but this time you will get the short questions. It may be a objective type question, it may be a question of one word answer, and it may be a question where you have to write one line answer. It means generally we can say it will be a objective type question paper for you, and you have to do it carefully. Read this chapter thoroughly, and if you have any doubt, so we can discuss in the Zoom online classes. So students, try to show your love in action to others, to your family, to your neighbors, to your society, to your nation, to your school, teachers, and others. This is the most important message given by this story to you. Means we have to show our love in action, not in words. So students, we will meet in the next video. Thank you. Stay home, stay safe.